One of the things that Fikile Mbalula has been saying at his news conference, which looks as if it has just ended following the ANC's Lekotla over the weekend, is that the Minister of Defence and Military Veterans, I think that's the full title, will be briefing the nation tomorrow on what has been happening with the South African troops that are part of forces which are trying to stabilize the Eastern DRC, where there have been ongoing battles for quite some time now between the army of the Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23 rebels, which it is widely believed the rebels are supported by Rwanda. Rwanda continues at every opportunity it gets to formally deny that it is in any way involved in backing the M23. I'm not sure even Rwanda believes that to be the case. The battle has stepped up in significance. Goma, town in Eastern DRC, very close to the border between Rwanda and DRC, has now, it would appear, either been overrun or is being very close to being overrun. And there's plenty of finger pointing, and apparently Cyril Ramaphosa and Paul Kagame have spoken on the phone, and Paul Kagame has said, well, we must have peace, there must be negotiations, and what, us back the M23? What absolute nonsense, and who knows what Cyril Ramaphosa waffled on about. The foreign editor of News 24, Philip de Wet, joins us now. Philip, good afternoon.
Hello, John.
This is something which, again, I mean, it's been a low-level conflict for probably 20-odd years. I mean, since Rwanda got beyond its genocide and Paul Kagame established himself as a strongman in the Central Lakes region, the M23 and the mineral riches in that part of the world, there's been sort of low-level fighting for quite a long time, but it is now escalating. What's going on?
Look, you can absolutely draw it back to 30 years ago or so, immediately after the Rwandan genocide. You'll see in the language this week that Rwanda uses, it refers to genocidal forces on the DRC side of the border. So from Rwanda's perspective, what M23 is doing is fighting off the Hutu perpetrators of that 1994 Rwandan genocide. And Rwanda frames this in terms of people of the Congo who are protecting themselves against genocidal forces within the Congo without any support from Rwanda. I'm with you. I don't think anyone believes that anymore. I mean, we now have had South Africa come out directly and accuse Rwanda of backing M23. So that makes it into kind of a proxy war that's happening there. We don't have solid confirmation in terms of on the ground boots, but I mean, you can even cast it as an invasion of the DRC by Rwanda based on the early reports we have of Rwandan troops and equipment moving across the border into Goma. So this is very much a country to country fight, in the middle of which South Africa finds itself basically because many decades of UN peacekeeping failed there. It failed in the analysis of both the countries involved and I think the entire world. So SADC kind of stepped up, South Africa stepped up, found itself in the middle of that. And I mean, as we've seen for a very long time now, the South African forces there are ill-equipped, ill-prepared. The lines of supply are very shaky indeed. So the almost predictable thing has now happened. The fighting has escalated. South African soldiers find themselves in the middle of a full-blown war for which they are simply not prepared.
Yeah, I don't know what the minister is going to tell us tomorrow, the briefing which we've just been promised by Fikile Mbalula, but the opposition parties, the DA leading it, but other opposition parties joining in, saying South Africa should extricate itself from that mission. All that's happening is South African lives are being lost, and South Africa's lack of military excellence is being exposed. There's no point to us being there. And then I heard a quote earlier today from somebody from the SANDF saying no, to withdraw our forces would be regarded as a defeat. Do you get any sense that South Africa might, I don't think South Africa would act unilaterally, but might South Africa be chatting to its SADC colleagues in the that very clumsily named Southern African military involvement in the DRC. You think they're looking for a way out, or
Look,
pull back to the sidelines, throw more troops into it?
South Africa very much likes to delegate responsibility for these things to SADC. So we saw that in Mozambique, where South Africa said, this is a SADC issue and we will abide by what SADC says. Now, look, in the background, what is certainly happening is that South Africa is pushing for greater involvement from other countries and from the rest of the region, notably Malawi and Tanzania. I would be extremely surprised if there aren't conversations happening with Western nations as well. Keep in mind that the West and the original suppliers to the UN mission there remain very much involved, to the extent that the French embassy in Kinshasa was on fire today, because of protests and the DRC saying, you support Rwanda and you're basically complicit with this invasion of our country. So from the perspective of France and Belgium and the Netherlands, it makes a lot of sense to come to the party now and say, maybe we don't have primary responsibility here as MONUSCO anymore, but we can support the SADC and the South African mission. You'll notice absent from that list, of course, is the United States. And this is the problem and as we predicted, this is the problem that we face now. The United States is the big gorilla, which has the political clout, which has the military clout, which can very quickly change the equation. But at the moment, America is rather caught up in its own troubles and is completely absent from this theater. I wonder if that's coincidence. I wonder if this big M23 push now is if the timing is coincidental, or whether it's because the big global peacekeeper has taken its eye off the ball.
Yeah, I mean, the sentiment from listeners that's come in while we've been chatting, Philip, is very much pull out, that we're doing no good. All that's happening is that South African troops are being killed. We're not impacting the situation on the ground in any way. What on earth are we doing there? But Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC, Jacob Zuma's ANC, Thabo Mbeki's ANC, Nelson Mandela's ANC were very keen to be seen to contribute towards attempts at peacekeeping in Africa. And it would be a fairly significant turnaround if Ramaphosa's ANC Lekgotla, the cabinet Lekgotla tomorrow, I don't know whether that's going to be discussed, whether they do decide to, I don't know, to withdraw to our own borders.
It would also be a strategic blunder of epic proportions in the long run. Look, it's very hard when troops are dying and when the situation is dire to take the long view. It's very easy for politicians to say, let's just get out of there. Body bags coming home on airplanes is not good for the optics. So, the political decision is to pull out. The strategy of Africans keeping peace in Africa is a solid one. I don't think anyone argues with that. The practical implications of a DRC in turmoil, in greater turmoil than it is now, that is a terrible prospect for the region and for South Africa. In the longer run, that has military and strategic consequences. It has economic consequences. It speaks to potential migrant flows. Keep in mind that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who are displaced. So to walk away from this would be a humanitarian catastrophe, and in the long run, it would certainly do South Africa no favors. That does not mean that South Africa won't. I think that is going to be a very hard decision to cast it as kind of a potentially tactical retreat. That is one option. And I think a lot of that will come down to what kind of support can be offered. South Africa is not really in a position to just suddenly turn on the war machine and pour people and material into that part of the world. Other countries are better positioned to do that. So if help is coming, then I suspect South Africa will stick around. If there is no prospect of help coming, it would be a mistake, but it would be extremely hard for South Africa to stick around.
Thanks very much to News 24 foreign editor Philip de Wet.